Today I am, for the first time, starching an Elizabethan ruff using the Great Guide on Sewing and Starching Ruffs by Noel Gilliam, which is available on the Elizabethan Costume Facebook group. My ruff is a linen cotton blend. It is all hand sewn, save for a line of fancy machine stitching I did to lock the neckband and pleats in place. I have my homemade laundry starch here. I used the suggested amount of 2 tablespoons of cornstarch to 1 cup of water, and I heated it 30 seconds at a time, I think, for about a total of a minute and a half on high in the microwave. As you can see, it's much thicker than store-bought spray starch. In fact, I think it might be a little bit too thick. I also have a spray bottle of water, so I'm just going to spray the ruff down. Now, this is far too wet to starch it as it is, so I'm just going to wrap it in a towel and remove the excess water. Okay, I have my starch, which has finished cooling, and I'm just going to use my fingers to work it into the fabric. I'm just using the fingers of my left hand to help lift and separate the pleats so the starch really gets in there. Since my starch is so thick, I want to make sure I don't get any large lumps of it sticking to the fabric, so I'm just going to try and smooth all those out as best I can. And I've reached the end of my ruff, so now I'm going to flip it over and starch the other side. This may not be really necessary, but I want to make sure I didn't miss any spots. Okay, I set the ruff in front of our heater to dry, and every few minutes I adjusted it to make sure that it wouldn't stick together. The ruff is now fully dry and the starch worked. This is the ruff after the first pass of lightly misting it with water. Sad ruff is sad. And now I've mounted the ruff on my 16th century soda bottle. I've wrapped some quilt bedding around it so the ruff doesn't slide around. I've also put in my basting thread for the sets, taking a stitch about every 3 inches. I'm using black carpet thread so it'll show up on the camera, but it is made of nylon. My curling iron doesn't get super hot, so I don't have to worry about the thread melting, but if I was using a different iron, I would have used cotton thread. The reason the set is 3 inches is that is the circumference of my curling iron. Okay, I've already set part of the top of the ruff, but I still have this bit left. It's been sitting out for a while, so I'm just going to lightly re-dampen it, which I probably shouldn't do, but it's kind of hard to manipulate it as it is right now. If the ruff gets too wet, it does like to start to stick to the curling iron. So I'm going to smooth out some of these wrinkles with my hands, and now I'm just going to take the curling iron and place it under the linen but over the basting thread. This is a bit hard to do since I'm working sideways. I'm going to hook my finger around the basting stitches on either side of this pleat and pull them taut. On occasion I'm just kind of moving or turning the curling iron to make sure that it doesn't stick. I'm just going to try and smooth out a few of these bubbles here and there. Since my curling iron doesn't get super hot, it does take a while for it to set the pleat. You can tell that the linen is dry when it takes on a slightly glossy look and feels dry to the touch. Now I'm going to do the rest of the ruff, then flip it over and start on the other side. And as you can see, once I pull the basting thread taut, we're starting to get the familiar figure 8 shape. Now I'm going to go and set the rest of the ruff. And here's the finished set ruff. Considering it was my first time setting one, I'm happy that it worked, and I did not manage to light it on fire or make it implode.